Have you ever walked through a parking lot and seen a truck you couldn't quite place? Something familiar, but also completely wrong, like a memory from a dream you can't fully recall? Well, buckle up, because the history of pickup trucks is littered with models that time has practically erased. Some were ahead of their time, some were bizarre experiments, and some were just plain bad ideas wrapped in chrome. Today, we're counting down the 25 most forgotten pickup trucks of all time. And trust me, a few of these are going to blow your mind. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Let's get into it. Number 25, the Chevrolet Avalanche. The Avalanche had one genuinely clever trick up its sleeve. A fold-down midgate between the cab and the bed that let you extend the cargo area straight through the back seat. Chevy built these from 2002 through 2013, and they actually sold pretty well. So why is it on this list? Because despite over a decade of production, the Avalanche has almost completely vanished from the conversation. Part of that is the plastic body cladding that covered the lower half like cheap armor. The early models looked like they were dressed for a paintball tournament. Under all that plastic, this was essentially a Suburban with a bed, riding on a full-size frame with genuine towing capability. The midgate concept was so good that GM brought it back for their electric trucks decades later, but the Avalanche quietly disappeared, and most people forgot it was ever there. Number 24, the Dodge Dakota. Here is a truck that was once everywhere and now exists mostly as a fading memory on used car lots. The Dakota launched in 1987 as the first true mid-size pickup, slotting between compact trucks and the full-size heavyweights. What made the Dakota special was something almost unheard of in its class: a V8 engine option. Most mid-size trucks topped out at a V6. The Dakota stuffed a 5.2-liter V8 under the hood, giving it more muscle than some full-size competitors. Over 3 generations spanning 24 years, the Dakota carved out a respectable niche. The 5.9 RT variant was basically a muscle car pretending to be a sensible truck. But then Dodge killed it in 2011. No replacement, no revival, just gone. For a truck that sold over 175,000 units in a single year, that is a spectacular fall from memory. Number 23, the Subaru Brat. If you have never heard of the Brat, sit down for this one. Brat stands for Bi-Drive Recreational All-Terrain Transporter, which is already the most aggressively 80s name imaginable. Subaru built this little four-wheel drive pickup from 1978 through 1994, and it was genuinely fun to drive. But the thing everyone remembers, if they remember it at all, is the rear-facing jump seats bolted into the truck bed. Yes, actual plastic seats with seat belts, facing backward. Why? Because of a tariff loophole. There was a 25% import tax on light trucks called the chicken tax, but passenger vehicles were taxed at only 2.5%. By adding those seats, Subaru classified the Brat as a passenger vehicle and dodged the tariff entirely. Brilliant and completely insane. President Ronald Reagan actually owned one and used it on his California ranch. Despite its charm, the Brat never became a mainstream hit. It was too small, too quirky, and too Japanese for the truck market of the 80s. Number 22, the Ford Ranchero. The Ranchero holds a special place in automotive history as the original car truck hybrid. Ford launched it in 1957, a full 2 years before Chevrolet answered with the El Camino. The concept was simple: take a car platform and give it a pickup bed. Ford marketed it as a vehicle that handled like a car and hauled like a truck, which was mostly true as long as you did not haul very much. Over 22 years and 7 generations, the Ranchero evolved from a sleek 50s cruiser into a muscular 70s machine. During the late 60s, you could get one with a 429 Cobra Jet V8, turning what was essentially a fair lane with a bed into a drag strip contender. But by '79, Ford pulled the plug. The El Camino gets all the nostalgia today, but the Ranchero was there first, and arguably better in several iterations. Despite outselling the El Camino in some years, the Ranchero has been almost completely forgotten by mainstream car culture. Number 21. The Chevrolet 454 SS. From 1990 through '93, Chevrolet built a truck that was all business and zero flash. The 454 SS was a half-ton with a massive 7.4-liter V8 crammed under the hood, producing 230 horsepower and a staggering 385 pound-feet of torque. Everything on the exterior was either blacked out or color-matched. No chrome, no pinstripes, no nonsense. It came in exactly one configuration: regular cab, short bed, rear-wheel drive. Take it or leave it. The 454 SS laid the groundwork for the modern performance truck segment, but it launched around the same time as the Ford F-150 Lightning, and the Lightning stole all the thunder. It got the magazine covers and the cultural spotlight. The Chevy quietly did its thing and disappeared. Today, collectors are finally waking up to what this truck was: a raw, no-compromise muscle truck from an era when that concept was still brand new. Number 20. The Dodge Lil Red Express. Speaking of trucks with personality, the 1978 Dodge Lil Red Express was essentially a hot rod wearing a cowboy hat. Dodge took a D-150 pickup, painted it vivid red, slapped enormous smokestack exhaust pipes behind the cab, and covered the doors and tailgate in elaborate old-timey decals. Under the hood sat a 360 V8, borrowed from the police package, making 225 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but in the late '70s, when emissions regulations had strangled most passenger cars down to embarrassing power levels, the Lil Red Express was actually one of the fastest American vehicles you could buy. Trucks were exempt from many of those emissions rules, and Dodge exploited that loophole beautifully. Car and Driver tested it and found it could outrun a Corvette of the same year in the quarter mile. A pickup truck, beating a Corvette, in 1978. Only about 7,300 units were built across 2 model years, and while truck enthusiasts know the name, the general public has completely forgotten this wild, smokestack-wearing rebel ever existed. Number 19. The GMC Syclone. In 1991, GMC did something unhinged. They took a compact Sonoma pickup and gave it a turbocharged 4.3-liter V6, making 280 horsepower, paired it with all-wheel drive, and created a truck that could hit 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds. That was faster than a Ferrari 348 of the same year. A small pickup truck, faster than a Ferrari. The Syclone had a blacked-out body kit, a digital dashboard, and the kind of attitude that made sports car owners deeply uncomfortable at stoplights. Only about 3,000 were built in that single model year, and then GMC just stopped. They followed it up with the Typhoon SUV, but the Syclone itself was a one-year wonder. With only 3,000 made and many driven hard, surviving examples are incredibly rare. The Syclone was decades ahead of the current performance truck trend, and it did it with a fraction of the budget. Number 18. The Jeep Comanche. Before the Gladiator became Jeep's return to the pickup world, there was the Comanche. Launched in 1986 on the Cherokee XJ platform, the Comanche was a genuinely capable compact truck with serious off-road credentials. It had the legendary 4.0-liter inline-six that made the Cherokee a household name, plus available four-wheel drive and a solid rear axle that could handle real trail punishment. So what went wrong? Politics. AMC, which owned Jeep, was running out of money. Chrysler bought Jeep in '88, and since they already had the Dakota, they did not want internal competition. The Comanche was starved of updates and left to wither. By '92, it was gone. About 190,000 were built, which sounds respectable until you realize Ford sold over 1 million Rangers in the same period. The Comanche never got the chance to prove what it could really do. Today, XJ Cherokee prices have skyrocketed, but clean Comanches remain surprisingly affordable. Number 17. The Ford Explorer Sport Tracks. What happens when you take a Ford Explorer SUV and weld a truck bed onto the back? You get the Sport Track, which Ford sold from 2001 through 2010. The Sport Track was based on the Explorer platform with a stretched wheelbase to accommodate both a crew cab and a short bed. It was comfortable, practical, and answered a question that a surprising number of buyers were actually asking. The adrenaline trim, offered late in the run, came with a 4.6-liter V8, making 292 horsepower, which made it one of the more entertaining ways to haul plywood. But the Sport Track never achieved the identity it needed. It was too truck for SUV buyers and too SUV for truck buyers. When the second generation ended in 2010, Ford walked away without a replacement. It remains one of those vehicles that people vaguely recall but cannot quite name. Number 16. The Lincoln Blackwood. In 2002, Lincoln had a bold vision. Take the luxury of a Navigator, put it in a pickup body, and sell it to wealthy buyers who wanted a truck that never needed to do truck things. The Blackwood was based on the F-150 Super Crew and came loaded with every luxury feature, leather everywhere, navigation, premium sound, the works. The bed was lined with stainless steel and featured a power tonneau cover with faux wood trim. Yes, simulated wood grain on a truck bed. The interior was gorgeous, but the truck had a fatal flaw: rear-wheel drive only. No four-wheel drive option on a luxury truck marketed to people who presumably lived where it sometimes snowed. Lincoln built it for exactly one model year and sold about 1,500 units. It was a spectacular failure that was simply ahead of its time. Today, luxury trucks are a massive market segment, which makes the Blackwood look less foolish and more prophetic. Number 15. The Chevrolet SSR. Chevrolet's Supersport Roadster arrived in 2003 looking like something pulled from a 50s fever dream. It was a retro-styled convertible pickup with a retractable hardtop, rear-wheel drive, and a Trailblazer platform underneath. By 2005, Chevy had dropped in the 6.0-liter LS2 from the Corvette, making 390 horsepower, a convertible hot rod truck with Corvette power. Sounds amazing on paper, but the SSR weighed nearly 5,000 pounds and cost close to $50,000, which in 2003 money was serious cash. The tiny bed was useless for hauling, and the truck car identity crisis confused everyone. Too heavy to be sporty, too impractical to be a truck, too expensive to be a toy, Chevy pulled the plug after 2006, and the SSR became one of those vehicles people point at and say, "What is that thing?" Number 14. The Chevrolet Love stands for Light Utility Vehicle, which is about the most unromantic name you could give a truck. Chevrolet introduced it in 1972, and here is the secret: it was actually built by Isuzu in Japan. Chevy needed a compact truck to compete with Japanese imports, and rather than develop one from scratch, they imported Isuzu pickups with a Chevy badge. The timing was perfect. The next year, the Arab oil embargo hit, and suddenly a small truck getting over 30 miles per gallon was exactly what America wanted. Chevy sold nearly 40,000 LOVs in '73 alone. A second generation arrived in '81 with a diesel option delivering nearly 50 miles per gallon. Over its entire run, about 500,000 LOVs were sold, and its success directly led to the Chevy S10. Yet, despite 500,000 units sold and essentially launching Chevrolet's compact truck program, the LUV has been almost completely erased from popular memory. Number 13, the GMC Caballero. If you know the Chevrolet El Camino, then imagine its identical twin brother who nobody ever talks about. That is the GMC Caballero. Built from 1978 through 87, the Caballero was mechanically identical to the El Camino, sharing the same A-body platform, engines, and transmissions. The only differences were badges and minor trim. So why does no one remember it? Because it lived entirely in the El Camino's shadow. The El Camino had the name recognition, the cultural cachet, the movie appearances. The Caballero had none of that. Production numbers were significantly lower, which ironically makes surviving Caballeros rarer and potentially more collectible. But rarity has not translated into fame. The Caballero remains one of the most overlooked trucks of the 80s, a ghost in the GMC lineup that even die-hard enthusiasts sometimes forget existed. Number 12. The Dodge Warlock. In 1977, Dodge decided that pickup trucks needed more attitude. The Warlock was part of what Dodge called its Adult Toys series, which is a marketing concept that probably would not fly today. Based on the D150, the Warlock came with gold pinstriping real oak sideboards in the bed, chrome slot wheels, and an interior trimmed in black leather with gold accents. You could get it with the 440 big block V8, turning this custom cruiser into a legitimate performer. The Warlock looked like the kind of truck a rock star would drive to a honky-tonk bar fight. Produced from 77 through 79, it was never a high-volume model. The Warlock has been completely overshadowed by the Lil Red Express from the same era. Dodge revived the Warlock name recently as a Ram trim package, but that modern version has about as much connection to the original as a goldfish has to a shark. Number 11. The Subaru Baja. In 2003, Subaru looked at its Outback wagon and thought, what if we just chopped the back off and added a tiny truck bed? The result was the Baja, and it confused absolutely everyone. Too small to be a real truck, and too truck-shaped for wagon buyers. The bed was barely big enough for a few bags of mulch. But here is what people missed. The Baja had Subaru's legendary all-wheel drive, a turbocharged option making 210 horsepower, and the kind of rugged reliability Subaru was building its reputation on. It could handle snow, mud, and gravel with total confidence. The problem was purely perception. America was not ready for a compact lifestyle truck in 2003. By 2006, Subaru pulled the plug. Today, the entire industry is chasing exactly this kind of small, versatile, adventure-ready vehicle. Ford's Maverick, Hyundai's Santa Cruz, they all owe a debt to the Baja. It was just born 15 years too early. Number 10. The Dodge Rampage. Take a front-wheel drive Dodge Omni economy car, chop off the back end, and give it a tiny pickup bed. That is the Dodge Rampage, built from 1982 through 84. It looked like a coupe that someone forgot to finish. With a 2.2-liter four-cylinder making only 96 horsepower, it was never going to tow anything serious. The Rampage was meant to be an economical little runabout that could occasionally carry furniture. Only about 3,500 were produced, making it genuinely rare. But the real gem is the Carroll Shelby version. Yes, that Carroll Shelby. A tiny number were modified by Shelby's shop in California, and those are essentially unicorns now. Finding a regular Rampage is difficult enough. Finding a Shelby Rampage is like finding a reasonable take on the internet. Number 9. The Mitsubishi Raider. When Mitsubishi decided to enter the American pickup market in 2006, they took the laziest possible approach. They grabbed a Dodge Dakota, changed the front-end styling, slapped on a Mitsubishi badge, and called it the Raider. Under the skin, it was 100% Dakota, built in the same factory with the same engines, transmissions, and chassis. So why would anyone buy a Raider instead of the Dakota? Great question. Almost nobody did. The Raider landed when both the Mitsubishi brand and mid-size trucks were declining. A little over 20,000 were sold before production ended in 2009. The Dakota itself did not survive much longer. The Raider represents the most forgettable kind of forgotten, a badge-engineered truck with no identity of its own. It is the truck equivalent of a photocopy of a photocopy. Number 8. The Ford Courier. Before the Ranger existed, Ford's small truck was the Courier, sold from 1972 through 82. Just like Chevy's Love, the Courier was not built by Ford. It was a Mazda B-Series pickup wearing a Ford badge, imported from Japan. The Courier was basic transportation at its most fundamental. Small, reliable, fuel-efficient, and about as exciting as a tax form. But it gave Ford dealers something to sell when buyers walked in asking for a small, affordable truck during the fuel crisis 70s. Powered by Mazda's four-cylinder engines, it offered both two-wheel and four-wheel drive and could carry a reasonable payload. When Ford developed its own compact truck, the Ranger, for '83, the Courier was quietly retired. Most people who owned one probably do not even remember the name. It was the kind of truck that did its job without complaint and vanished without a trace, like a reliable employee who retires and nobody throws a party. Number 7. The Isuzu Hombre. The Hombre might win the award for the most forgotten truck name in history. Isuzu sold this compact pickup from '96 through 2000, and it was essentially a rebadged Chevy S10 with slightly different front-end styling borrowed from the Brazilian market. General Motors and Isuzu had a long truck partnership going back to the LUV days. The Hombre was built in the same factory as the S10, with the same engines and same everything else. The only uniquely Isuzu thing about it was the badge. Predictably, it never caught on. Why buy an Isuzu version of a Chevy truck from a brand with a fraction of the dealer network? The Hombre disappeared after 2000, and Isuzu later tried again with the equally forgotten I-Series, rebadged Chevy Colorados. Those flopped too, and by 2009, Isuzu left the American passenger vehicle market entirely. Number 6. The Dodge Swept-Side. In 1957, Chevrolet's Cameo Carrier pickup was turning heads with its smooth fiberglass fenders and car-like styling. Dodge needed an answer, and they needed it fast. Their solution was creative, bizarre, and utterly charming. Engineers raided the parts bin and grafted the rear quarter panels and tail fins from the two-door Dodge Suburban station wagon directly onto a standard step-side truck bed. The result was the Swept-Side, a pickup truck with honest-to-goodness car fins sweeping along the sides of the cargo bed. It looked like a truck that had been to a costume party, dressed as a sedan. Built by hand in Chrysler's special equipment section rather than on the main assembly line, the Swept-Side was always a low-volume affair. Total production across 3 model years, from 57 through 59, barely reached 1,200 units. Most working truck buyers could not justify paying extra for chrome fins on a vehicle meant to haul hay bales. By 1959, the mismatched look of dual headlights on a finned bed had grown tired, and the Swept-Side was quietly retired. Today, surviving examples are prized by Mopar collectors who appreciate just how wonderfully strange this truck really was. Number 5. The Studebaker Champ. By 1960, Studebaker was a company in its death throes. Cash was hemorrhaging, the competition was fierce, and the brand desperately needed new products it could not afford to develop. Their solution for the truck market was the Champ, a pickup that was essentially a Frankenstein creation, assembled from whatever parts Studebaker could get its hands on cheaply. From the B-pillar forward, the Champ was identical to the 1959 Lark sedan. The chassis dated all the way back to the 1949 Studebaker truck. And the cargo bed? That was a Dodge Swept-Line bed, purchased as surplus tooling from Chrysler because Studebaker could not afford to design its own. The result was a truck where nothing quite matched. The bed was wider than the cab, the character lines did not align, and the whole thing looked like three different vehicles that had been welded together during a blackout. But you know what? The Champ worked. It was honest, reliable, and you could get it with a Studebaker V8, making up to 210 horsepower. Only about 25,000 were sold before production ended in '64, making them genuine rarities today. Number 4. The Chevrolet Corvair Rampside. Chevrolet's Corvair was already an oddball, an American car with a rear-mounted air-cooled engine like a Volkswagen Beetle. But in 1961, Chevy took the strangeness further by turning the Corvair into a pickup truck. The Rampside had a cab-forward design with the driver sitting directly over the front wheels, an engine under the cargo bed in the rear, and its signature feature, a fold-down side gate that doubled as a loading ramp. That ramp was genuinely clever. Instead of lifting heavy items over the tailgate, you could roll them up the side ramp directly into the bed. Bell Telephone loved these trucks for loading cable drums. The downside was that the rear-mounted engine created a raised hump in the back half of the bed, meaning the cargo floor was not flat. You had this weird step in the middle that made loading from the rear awkward. The Rampside's air-cooled flat 6 made only 80 horsepower, which was busy and noisy and not particularly impressive. Sales started reasonably at about 11,000 units in '61, but dropped fast. By '64, the Corvair commercial vehicles were gone. The Rampside remains one of the most innovative and least remembered trucks in Chevrolet's long history. Number 3. The Mazda REPU. Here is something that sounds like it cannot be real. In 1974, Mazda took a B-Series pickup truck and replaced its conventional engine with a Wankel rotary engine. They called it the REPU, short for rotary engine pickup. This was, and still is, the only production pickup truck ever sold with a rotary engine. The 13B rotary made about 110 horsepower, which was competitive for a compact truck at the time, and it revved with a smoothness that no piston engine could match. The rotary also gave the REPU a distinctive exhaust note that sounded more like a sports car than a work vehicle. But there were problems. Rotary engines are not known for fuel efficiency, and the REPU arrived just as the oil crisis was making gas mileage a top priority for truck buyers. It was also mechanically exotic, meaning most small-town mechanics had no idea how to work on it. Mazda sold the REPU in North America from '74 through '77, and total production numbers were extremely small. Today, the REPU is one of the holy grails for rotary enthusiasts and truck collectors alike. It proves that sometimes the craziest ideas produce the most fascinating machines. Number 2. The Ford Durango. No, not the Dodge Durango SUV. This is the Ford Durango, and we would bet serious money you have never heard of it. Between 1979 and '82, Ford partnered with National Coach Works to transform the Fairmont Futura compact car into a car-based pickup. Only between 200 and 350 units were ever built, making it one of Ford's rarest vehicles of any kind. The standard engine was a modest 200 cubic inch inline-six, though a V8 was available. The Durango borrowed its cabin from the Fairmont Futura, offering car-like comfort unusual for trucks of that era. But buyers never found a compelling reason to choose a Fairmont with a bed over a proper compact truck. The Ford Durango disappeared so completely that even dedicated Ford historians do a double take when they learn it existed. Number 1, the Powell Sport Wagon. And here it is, number 1, the single most forgotten pickup truck in automotive history. The Powell Sport Wagon, built in Compton, California, from 1955 through 1956. You have almost certainly never heard of this vehicle, and that is because the Powell Manufacturing Company was not a traditional automaker. They were a surplus parts scavenger. After World War II, the founders of Powell bought surplus mechanical components from Plymouth, including engines, transmissions, and axles, then designed and built their own body panels and frames around them. The result was the Sport Wagon, a small utilitarian pickup that could be purchased either as a bare-bones work truck or as a station wagon variant. The truck used a Plymouth flathead 6-cylinder engine and had a distinctive angular body that looked homemade, because in many ways it was. Powell sold these trucks through their own network of dealers, mostly in the western United States, and the price was significantly lower than a comparable truck from the Big Three. But the company could not sustain itself once the supply of surplus Plymouth parts dried up. By 1956, Powell Manufacturing closed its doors forever. Only a few hundred were ever built, and surviving examples can be counted almost on two hands. The Powell represents the ultimate forgotten truck, a vehicle built from the scraps of another era, by a company that most people have never heard of, in a factory that no longer exists. It is the ghost of American ingenuity, resourceful, scrappy, and completely lost to time. And there you have it, 25 pickup trucks that time has practically erased from memory. From luxury disasters to rotary-powered experiments to trucks literally built from surplus war parts, the history of pickups is way more wild and weird than most people realize. Which of these forgotten trucks surprised you the most? And did we miss one that deserves to be on this list? Let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into truck history, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.